Hello and welcome to the FinTech Finance Virtual. I'm your host, Doug Mackenzie, and on today's very special episode, we're going to be looking at Mentorpreneurship, a program designed by LSE Generate and in partnership with OakNorth, a bank in the UK that is designed for entrepreneurs. So joining me today, I have the co-founder Rishi Khosla from OakNorth and Laura Jane Silverman, the head of LSE Generate, joining me here today on the show. Guys, thank you so much for joining me here today. LJ, can I actually ask you to, for our audience who might not be aware, introduce yourself and a bit more about the program, please?
Yes, good, thank you. We're just launching our European hub today over in Lisbon. So I'd like to say it's really sunny and we're eating all the pastel de nata, but it's actually raining and I've just got scrambled eggs. So the reality is different.
Well, congratulations. That sounds absolutely amazing. And thank you for, sparing some time to speak with us today. And also we have Rishi Khosla from OakNorth. Rishi, how are you doing here today as well?
Doing excellent. Thank you so much.
Brilliant. Well, with that in mind, then, I guess if I come to you, Rishi, first, you've mentioned why LSE is where you met Joel Perlman, and I'm interested as to why the Mentorpreneurship project now. What has been personally or professionally or globally that has motivated you to start this project?
Sure. So look, mentoring is something which I benefited from a very, very early stage in my career. I would even say actually through my university time, I've sort of been lucky enough to have certain mentors who sort of guided me and sort of advised me. And so it's always been a part of the journey which I've been on and something which I've wanted to put together with the whole concept of entrepreneurship and in a way sort of expand the impact of. And not necessarily very specifically to only mentoring for someone who's in a business, but really that whole life cycle type mentoring concept. And it was really conversations with LJ and her colleagues at the LSE when we started just talking about some of the social entrepreneurship initiatives that the LSE had, and we started talking about sort of our own experiences on mentoring and the benefits of mentoring. And those conversations just evolved into the Mentorpreneurship program, which has been formulated. But I think the gestation period, LJ, has probably been about a couple of years, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of actually going from ideation to then understanding actually what would be the benefit of this type of program for a community and a community at large. And then on a practical basis, what type of impact is it there to deliver and how do we make that happen, etc. So it's really been, as I say, a seed which has come with our journeys, Joel and my journeys, of something which we view as incredibly important and putting that together with happenstance conversations to come here. So I don't know, LJ, if you'd agree with that.
Yeah, LJ, I'm really interested. Can you just really outline for our audience who might not be aware more about the program and take us through that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Rishi's kind of hit the nail on the head. It's all about the human interactions and how they influence an entrepreneur's journey. And I think all of us, whether they're entrepreneurs or not, we look back at our education and our kind of schooling, and we don't necessarily remember the lesson itself, but we remember a particularly inspirational teacher or a headmistress or headmaster who motivated you in those challenging times. And they are the kind of the valuable memories and interactions that can really catalyze an entrepreneur's journey. And so we have decided to kind of dedicate, as we said, a kind of entire program to this. We've spent, I think it has been 2 years back and forth having these really kind of nitty gritty sessions where Rishi's been amazing. He's really challenged us and we've challenged him. And it's been a great way actually of a corporate working together with an educational institution to create and curate, hopefully, I mean, Rishi talked about it being a movement, so something like Teach First, rather than just a program that once the funding has completed, it just kind of falls off the cliff and that's the end. We want this to be something that is sustainable and has impact for years and years to come, and also something that can be replicated, not just kind of within LSE, but across different universities. And Rishi mentioned communities as well, so working with schools, that's part of the programme here in the UK and across the world. So we're extremely ambitious, but really confident that this is going to be a really impactful programme that really changes the lives of entrepreneurs at LSE and across the UK and abroad. So practically what it looks like, I don't know what you think when you think of a mentor, but quite often it's that kind of very traditional kind of seasoned entrepreneur, kind of often white male coming in to talk to a student about their experience. And yes, there's a place for that, but there's so much more. So we've taken quite a radical departure from the kind of stereotype of mentoring. We've interviewed students, it's very much student-led. So we've worked with alumni working out where those really kind of transformational interactions were. What did they look like? Was it kind of just network expansion? Was it motivation and kind of confidence building, resilience, all of those softer skills that you attribute to the entrepreneurial journey? Was it just the kind of the technical kind of know-how and filling those gaps in a student's knowledge? And we worked out kind of where students most needed the help and who were the right people to offer that support as well. So what we realized actually is that yes, you can bring in a really seasoned entrepreneur, 20 years in the game, they can provide inspiration, but they might not know how to create a strong business development kind of piece. So they might not be aware of TikTok and Instagram and those kind of really important kind of communication channels that are really important for students at the early stages. So what we've done is actually created this kind of trickle down approach where we bring in really seasoned entrepreneurs. They come in, they mentor recent graduates, so maybe kind of 3 to 5 years in the game. Those entrepreneurs will work with current students. And then we're just about to launch a really exciting collaboration with the Girls' Day School Trust, a schools program. We're going to be bringing in around 120 students from secondary school age, and our current students will mentor them. And then eventually working with also primary schools as well and kind of learning through play. The idea being that by the time students get to university, they don't have those hang-ups around kind of failure and issues around that. And they're just better, they're better set up to really survive what is a really difficult journey and also just thrive as well. Like we want to see real successes come out of this program. And so it's a kind of virtuous circle. We nurture students while they're at university, they come back and give back to the school. And alongside that is a digital toolkit as well. So it's made up of audio podcasts and audio series. And there's an app that matches students with alumni as well. And that digital kit, we're hoping to then work with other universities to kind of embed that in their programs. The idea essentially is that mentorship is not something that you just sprinkle over an entrepreneurship program, but it's baked in right from the beginning. So it's firmly embedded in the actual DNA of the entrepreneurship program.
I think that's so incredible. And the fact that it can then be, it's almost like an equation that you can then replicate into other organizations. And it really becomes just an organic way to tackle mentorpreneurship, because it has, as you said, you typically think of just that kind of studied kind of old white man in, I always think of tweed. I can't get it out of my head. And you know, kind of changing that narrative and having it organic from, you know, as you said, all the way down to secondary school. That's absolutely incredible. Now, I'm kind of interested then, Rishi, looking at that change, and obviously OakNorth, you guys have been incredibly digitally focused from the off, and hearing about that app, that's very exciting in the program. You know, but I'm interested to see what the kind of biggest challenges were for socially conscious businesses that they originally faced, and how that landscape is maybe now different because of programs like this one here.
Sure. So I'll address that, but also maybe talk to a few things that LJ just mentioned. So I think, look, on a macro basis, when we started having this discussion back a couple of years ago, probably actually thinking about it 2.5+ years ago, the whole concept of socially minded businesses. Again, I think this is the way that LJ had sort of talked about it, was really every business should be socially minded, right? So we're not talking about social enterprise, right? Which is potentially, let's say, not for profit or the like, What we're really saying is that every organization has a responsibility almost to be socially minded. And I actually think the last 18 odd months has accentuated that, right? Clearly with sort of the human cost of the pandemic. And now over the last months, the number of sort of extreme weather type events related to climate, you put that together, it's like all of us have a responsibility as individuals, but also as companies. So the whole concept of socially minded, in my mind, is something which actually is much more mainstream today than even it was back when we started this discussion. And if I just pick up on sort of a few points that LJ mentioned, when we started thinking about this, I always did think about entrepreneurship much more in the concept of like that individual who's a far reach, right, from where you are at any point in time. But then as LJ started getting and teams started getting the feedback from students, it was actually that near reach. It was the person who's 2, 3, 4 years ahead of you, right? And has actually gone through the path that you want to go through. It could be a secondary school student who wants to go into a particular university, right? To read a particular discipline, right? And actually just being able to have that access and understand that path has incredible value for those individuals. And exactly like was said, I mean, we really want to create this as a movement, not something which in any way is sort of isolated or only owned by the LSE or only in the LSE. It's like over time, this should expand and get to a point where actually it becomes the go-to place for individuals who effectively want to get that support to take that next step. And hopefully that gets driven by people who've experienced that support themselves and therefore see the value in actually giving that back to others.
And I'm interested to kind of explore that value more. And LJ, if I come to you for this, we're seeing that, to me, the life cycle process of the program is very interesting. But, looking at that value, what do you think the senior innovators get from just other than just a sense of giving back from this program? And Rishi's brought up the fact that it can even be on the base level of the program, be secondary school students who have gone in the direction that you might want to go. But I mean, if you look at the kind of the end of the cycle, what are those participants getting back?
Yeah, absolutely. And can I just check my audio is okay? Because it seems that Portugal's digging up their roads at the moment. Is that okay?
You're actually coming across fine, yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Just shout if I need to go.
It would be like...
Yeah, I mean, I think I touched on it earlier, but to expand on it, and one thing that we, when we're creating the mentorship program, again, it's not just really experienced entrepreneurs working with current students, but actually reverse mentoring as well as a concept. So bringing in current students into kind of boardrooms and CEO offices, and actually students with that confidence of youth and the kind of no hidden agenda, they come in and they really influence, and quite often they are the target audience for those kind of experienced entrepreneurs as well. So it is very much a kind of an ecosystem, and it's not just the kind of top down. I know that Rishi once talked about bringing his son into one of their boardrooms, and just that really innovative approach to kind of mentoring and developing an enterprising mindset. I mean, it is this generation that are the most kind of innovative of all, and so to bring in that kind of freshness and confidence and ideation into what could be a business that's been running kind of in the same way for years and years and years, and actually bringing them into work. I mean, just recently we went to Nova University yesterday in Lisbon, and they're bringing in corporates that really require that injection of innovation, and students get placed with a corporate for a month and get to offer advice. And that's a really kind of life-changing experience for a student to be working with Nike or whoever it might be, their kind of dream job. And they get kind of placed with the CEO and really senior members of staff. So for us, that's really important. The other thing I think to mention is that actually more seasoned entrepreneurs, they have sometimes a little bit more time as well. So those ones that are kind of 3 to 5 years in the game and are working 24/7 on their startups, when you've grown a startup into a kind of fully established corporate or a business, you have a bit more time. Like, you can delegate some of those opportunities and jump in, and it's a really rewarding experience for someone that is later on in their career, and kind of coming back on campus as well sometimes, and kind of remembering what it was like to be a student. Those kind of nostalgic moments always add to the experience too.
Yeah, and that's really the core of it, is that experience. And LJ, what are some of the kind of the features that from the app that you're most excited from as well? You know, how do you plan on attracting? I know you said that obviously that there's that segment of once they're past the 4 years, they might have a bit more time, but looking more on the digital side of things, how are you looking to plan on attracting entrepreneurial talent there?
Yeah, I think it's the awareness that actually students, it's their go-to place. Like, they go to an app for pretty much everything. As soon as they're awake, they turn to that. I mean, my experience of network, for example, was going to like a basement of a pub for some really antiquated networking meeting where you maybe meet about 50 people and only one of them, if that, are any use. And the great thing about the app is you can look at the profile, you can work out a meeting with those people all online, and you don't waste the time. Like, one thing that entrepreneurs don't have is time, so we're hoping to kind of support them in that. I think there's something really magical that happens as well when an LSE student meets with an LSE alum as well. So rather than just going to a networking event where you just get overwhelmed with different people from different backgrounds, not knowing how useful those connections are going to be, there's a kind of guarantee that you will be able to speak that same language. But we are really aware that we don't want to kind of create this elite entrepreneurial kind of concept, and we're really aware that we're in a privileged position. So actually working with other universities, with other schools as well, making sure they're fully part of the ecosystem, and we're learning from them as well. So we don't intend on kind of swooping in and telling them how it's done, but actually working with schools and learning from them, I think for us is really important.
Absolutely amazing, and that kind of leads me on to my next one. Is we've kind of talked about the replicating ability of this program and how it can be brought out, and obviously I've seen that there's several international chapters actually across the world already, with Mumbai, Chengdu, and Los Angeles. I mean, what's next on the cards, and where do you think we can take this?
Yeah, we do feel a bit like the Adele kind of music score going around the but I think as well, and Rishi talked about kind of these students that are kind of these alumni 3 to 5 years in the game, but also I think representation for us is really, really important. So one thing that students said is that if all they saw were these 50-year-old white males running businesses, then they just couldn't imagine themselves being in that position. And so one thing that we do is actually kind of make sure that every student is represented by alumni in the ecosystem. And as Rishi mentioned as well, kind of impact for us, UN SDG alignment is again baked into everything. It's in the DNA. We want to move from just calling them social entrepreneurs, just entrepreneurs. And if you're not social, you're antisocial, and that for us is a key point that we want to get across. But we're a global university as well, and social issues differ depending on where you are in the world. So to be able to go to Lagos and work on kind of, I don't know, problems around agri-tech, for example, or climate or gender equality for us is really important. Students, yes, they have a base in London, and London has an enormous amount to offer, but the reality is not everyone will stay in London. And so if we are committing to support alumni wherever in the world, then we need to be there and working with local innovators and developing that. I think in terms of next steps with that, the app is extremely helpful because it allows us to connect people from all over the world. So if a student is thinking about maybe going over to Lisbon, then they connect immediately with alumni on the ground and can meet them when they're over there. There's a digipack that we offer. I think the other thing just to mention with the digital element, maybe it was more to do with the question beforehand, but we can track those interactions as well. So one thing you can't always do when you hold an in-person event is work out what happened afterwards. And that's one of our biggest challenges is following and monitoring the kind of development of the entrepreneur. It's not so simple because so much is happening behind the scenes. So to be able to gather that data through the app is a really powerful tool.
I think that's absolutely incredible, and the follow-up in so many parts of life is always so difficult, and the most important part, and it's that continued relationship going forward, and I think that's so exciting. And Rishi, if I come to you, because obviously OakNorth is a bank that is really designed for entrepreneurs. I think that's fair to say, and so I'm really interested in your perspective in coming into this program. I know, as we mentioned at the beginning, you have a big kindred with LSE, but can you tell us a bit more about the partnership and what OakNorth can bring to this program?
Sure, absolutely. So look, I mean, we made a decision very early on to make sure that we give into communities. And we made a pledge several years ago to actually give 1% of our group profits to causes that we thought have impact ultimately. So the support here is coming out of that pledge. I think that, as you said, if you think about the whole mission behind OakNorth, it's really to help get access to financing for what we call the missing middle. Those are businesses which fundamentally don't get lent to well by general banks because they fall in between the gaps, right? So as an overall mission, that's what OakNorth's about. So when we think about actually the types of causes we want to support, they end up being around that whole space. Like, how do you help people who naturally won't have the opportunities to actually get an opportunity to therefore progress and also see the benefits and also pain of being an entrepreneur, but sort of like in a positive light. How can you open people up to that, and understanding that mindset of entrepreneurship doesn't necessarily just get embedded when you're finishing university or finishing college, right? But actually probably gets embedded much earlier on, in terms of your willingness to take risk, in terms of just how you interact, how you collaborate, right? Clearly with the amount which is changing in the way that careers will progress, and the whole concept of sort of, employment and careers, sort of the need to create a much more adaptable sort of generations, or from here on, so they can adapt as the workplace does adapt. Again, in my mind, is a level of entrepreneurship, right? It's a level of sort of saying, I can make change, I have comfort with change, I can take risk, etc. So all of those things are really sort of the reasons why we got involved. And as I said, in terms of like the reasons why we think OakNorth is sort of a good partner here. Number one, because we've got incredible belief around it, but number two, our whole mission is so aligned with the mission of Mentorpreneurship.
Yeah, it really does seem to just go straight back to OakNorth's DNA, and I think it's just the perfect partnership, and I think that's brilliant. But LJ, Rishi brought up something that I think is quite interesting, and I think on the top of people's minds at the moment is obviously the changing nature of how workplaces operate. We're now seeing, for instance, a lot of people who are fresh out of university working from home, and suddenly that mentorship kind of has apparently been lost for a lot of organizations. So we've talked all the way down from the kind of beginning, secondary school, looking at that post-care, because I think that's something quite important. With the program, if look to wrap up, does the program look to help these new people who are just fresh graduated into these organizations and continue working with them post-university?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one thing that we noted during COVID was the importance of being able to connect with someone else. I mean, we all know, whether entrepreneurs or not, how lonely that experience was, and how during such an uncertain time, those human interactions are all the more important. I still don't believe that kind of any online kind of meeting can be more powerful than an in-person human interaction. I think we all agree that, but we're really fortunate enough to have some really developed and advanced digital platforms that we've been using over the last year to maximize the chances of those students being supported. So we have a number of, for example, the accelerator that we've just concluded one of the most important pieces of that accelerator was the alumni program. So when you finish on that accelerator, it's such an emotionally intense experience, such a kind of a deep learning experience, that if suddenly you just leave those students hanging, quite often all of that unravels. And so you need to be thinking really carefully about how does the mentoring piece not just succeed during the accelerator itself, where the spotlight is, but actually in those quieter times afterwards, when the real need for that kind of support is there. So we make sure that there's weekly sessions. We now run with OakNorth support these retreats, especially for female founders as well, where we go off site and we spend 3 days peer-to-peer mentoring. We bring in our alumni mentors and we make sure that there is that in-person experience. So even though they're going to be working at home in their bedroom day after day, they still have those opportunities to connect in person. So it's that really nice combination of a strong online support network. So we have a real focus on founder development and online founder development. We have life coaches, we have well-being circles, which sounds really kind of fuzzy hippie style, but we get the most amazing feedback from them. And it just allows students to talk about the challenges that they've got and know that they're not the only ones that have challenges, but not just that kind of, oh, we're going through a difficult time, but actually how can we ensure that next time we come across that challenge, we're able to overcome that obstacle. So it's not just a kind of a support system, but it's also a really kind of robust learning opportunity as well. So yeah, it's a big piece of work. And I mean, if someone had told us 3 years ago that this is what we'd be doing, I think we'd just say, right, we're out of here. But I think we are, I mean, Generate is a kind of a startup in itself. Yes, it's part of this amazing institution, but we're learning. And I think one of the benefits from working with OakNorth was that actually we could learn from a really successful business. And I don't think we'd realised how impactful that would be. We have all the academic know-how, we have the kind of LSE brand, but actually talking to someone like Rishi on a kind of 2-weekly basis has been absolutely fundamental for the success of this program. So it's been an incredible experience.
Well, it's absolutely fascinating, and I think it's just so important, you know, as we've brought up in the last couple of minutes there, just how much the world has changed in the last 2 years, especially for you guys who have embarked on this program, but just for everyone, and being able to offer up a system where students of all ages can really kind of actually get access to that. It's just absolutely incredible. So thank you so much for you know, sharing that with us and giving your time to tell our audience a bit about it. So guys, thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
Okay, perfect. And also to our audience, thank you very much for watching. You can catch the rest of the series and much more over at www.fintechfinance.com, and of course YouTube and LinkedIn, where I will see you there in the comments. And once again, guys, thank you very much and goodbye.